Welcome back to our third and final video of our series exploring the east coast of Canada and all that it has to offer. Just to recap, my mom and I have been on a 2-week road trip around Nova Scotia, PEI, and now New Brunswick. We've moved on to our third province and our third part of the trip. We're going to be here for 4 days exploring everything that St. Andrews, St. John, and then the National Park of Fundy has to offer. So I'm super excited. It's world renowned for its nature and the hikes here and the waterfronts. One of the really cool things about it is that it has really high tide changes. So it goes from being 1 meter to 5 meters high in some places. So I'm excited to get to kind of witness that. There's some fun things that come along with those really big tide changes, like islands that you can only drive onto at some parts of the day. So I'm really excited for our adventures to continue here, and we're wrapping it up soon. So stay tuned to see all of that. Of course, we had to start the day by grabbing a coffee. So we headed to Samuel's in Summerside to get that coffee before we were off to a really long road trip, taking us from PEI all the way to St. Andrews, New Brunswick. To get there, we had to cross the Confederation Bridge, which is Canada's longest standing bridge and one of our greatest engineering feats, as well as the longest standing bridge over ice-covered water in the world. Yikes, that was a mouthful. Okay, we made it to St. Andrews, and our first stop had to be Kingsbrae Garden. It's one of their most popular gardens in the town, and it is this large estate with about 20 different types of gardens that have different types of flowers for each part. There was vegetable and fruit gardens, and then there was lots of flower gardens. There was a butterfly garden. We got to see some monarch butterflies. That was gorgeous. I think we spent about 2 to 3 hours here. This was definitely my favorite stop in St. Andrews. Highly recommend. Next stop was Water Street. We started on the outskirts, but as we made our way further into Water Street, the town got so cute. The stores looked amazing. Just off Water Street, you can find their main dock, and just before there, they're selling homemade fresh lemonade. So we had to pick one up before we headed onto the docks. This was super cute because we even spotted some people fishing right off the docks, which was pretty cool, and it gave you a great view of the city. For dinner, we were back on Water Street to go to Char and Chowder. I heard lots of great things about this restaurant. You go up to the window to order, and they had some amazing food and drinks. That wasn't the end of our night. Later, we headed back down to Water Street to catch an amazing fireworks show. Good morning from day 2 in New Brunswick. We're still in St. Andrews. We're going to spend the rest of the day still exploring the town, seeing some of the sights around the area, and then later today we're going to make the trip from St. Andrews to St. John, and we're going to make some stops along the way. Hopefully we'll be going to this really cool island called Minister's Island, which you can only go to when it's low tide to be able to drive there. So I think that will be a really cool sight. And yeah, so far I've been loving the town. To start the day, we had the best breakfast from Honeybeans. I got their salty Maritimer coffee. It was so good. They said it was a local fave, and I agree. It was really good. It was something different that you don't get at every other coffee shop, so it was fun to try something new. And then we got some breakfast bagels, which were delicious. They house made their bagels, which were so good. And then we just finished checking out Water Street, which was so cute. Actually, I think it had some of my favorite little knick-knacky kind of shops. They were really well done. I thought a good price, and they were fun to look through. Next up on a road trip was Minister's Island. Now this is a really special island because the only way to get there is to drive across the seabed. If it wasn't low tide, we would be under 14 feet of water right now, so it's kind of crazy. The first building you run into on the island is the original farmhouse, which is pretty cool to see. He raised some prize cattle, and he was known to be really strict on the cleanliness there. Not to mention, but maybe this is important, the guy who owns all this stuff is the man who created the Canadian railway system, and that's why people care. That's why so many people are exploring his home. This is his summer house, and I have to say it was beautiful. Everything was preserved perfectly, and then you go outside and there's acres and acres to explore. Even the original bathhouse, which is now the perfect lookout. Next, we're off to St. John's with a few stops on the way. We're starting our day on the road already. It's our second full day in New Brunswick, and we're headed to the Fundy National Park as well as Hopewell Rocks, which is famous for the tidal changes. It ranges in tide of about 5 meters every cycle, so about every 13 hours it's changing 5 meters high and 5 meters low, which is crazy. It's some of the biggest tidal changes in the world, and it creates these really cool rock structures and some really cool views. So we're going to explore the national park and then move on to Hopewell Rocks, and then later in the evening we're actually kayaking in the Hopewell Rocks after the water rises a bit. So it's a day full of adventures, and I'm so excited to just see the environment around us and yeah, just have a fun day in the outdoors. This is a perfect example of the low tide and the tidal changes, because when it's high tide, all of this will be covered in 5 meters of water. We made a quick pit stop in Alma to grab some coffee from this really cool converted church. After refueling with that coffee, we made it to Hopewell Rocks. We made the mistake of going on a national holiday, which I highly would not recommend because, as you can see, it was really busy. Now take a look at these rocks. This is the phenomenon I keep talking about. You can see the green moss way above my head. That is where the water will rise to, which will allow us to kayak right where I'm standing in just a few hours. 2 hours later, we're back at the park to start our kayaking adventure, and as you can see, the water has risen quite significantly.
Looks like someone went up there in the emergency.
Here you can see one of the rocks I was literally standing next to just 2 hours ago. Good morning from our final full day of this whole trip. Today is all about exploring St. John. So we're gonna start by looking at the reversing rapids. Hopefully we'll be able to see it. I don't know, we're going an hour after high tide, so I think we'll still be able to see them reversing, but I don't know, it's hard to say here. The tides change so quickly. And this is a perfect example of them not reversing because we missed it. St. John's has this city market that was explained to me as a farmer's market that's kind of been going on continuously for years and years and years. I personally found it a bit underwhelming. Now, you know, I had to do some shopping while I was there, so we popped into some stores along their historic uptown, and I tried on a few sneaky items before we made it back on track to check out the waterfront. We've finished our exploration of St. John, and now we've moved on to St. Martin's sea caves. These caves were huge, and it's so incredible that they were made just from the water. Exploring those sea caves made us extra hungry, so our dinner of choice was at Beer Bread. We had some delicious deep dish pizza, and it was the perfect way to end off our final night. It's our final day of the entire trip, and we've made our way to Fredericton. We're flying out of here later this evening, but we're just gonna spend some time relaxing before we return the car and head to the airport so that we can go home and go back to real life. So yeah, kind of bittersweet, but I'm excited to get back into a routine.